Hello, this video is about my new guitar. As you can probably tell from the title, I am very excited to own one of these. It's pretty special. I have to try and remember the whole name. It's a Gibson Custom Shop ES335 1964 reissue VOS. Basically what that means, obviously, it's a Gibson ES335, it's a custom shop, and then on top of that it's specifically modelled after a 1964 ES335. The 60s tends to be my favourite decade for pretty much all types of guitar, mainly because the necks are a bit thinner. I've got quite small hands, so it's easy to play a thinner neck for me. Ironically, my Les Paul actually has a 50s neck, but that's because they only did tobacco burst in the 50s style, and I wanted the tobacco burst colour. But generally I like the specs of Strats from the 60s, I prefer the specs of Les Pauls from the 60s, and also obviously 335s. So essentially the 1964 bit and the VOS, which stands for, I believe, Vintage Old Specification or Vintage Old Stock, one of those two, means it's a very authentic replication of what the guitars were like in the 1960s. So a lot of the tooling and techniques that are done in the factory are the same. I think the necks and stuff might even be hand carved instead of using a CNC machine, which is very cool. That's obviously quite a time consuming process and there's a lot more manual labour involved, which I imagine is why it costs about twice as much as a normal 335. And then on top of that, everything like the plastics and the electronics that are used in the wiring harness, like the capacitors and things, are all authentic to that decade as well. So if I look inside, I probably won't be able to get a shot of this on camera, but it's got the cloth wiring and all the kind of vintage components that you would expect to see in a guitar from that era. So the idea with a guitar like this really is that apart from buying an actual 60s ES335, this is about as close as you can get these days. I paid just under £5,000 for it, which is very painful to say. I was originally looking at some more standard ES335s, but I really wanted one that had the block inlays. And I went down to Denmark Street and tried a few in 6060 sound, and I also did lots of hunting online. I looked at Andertons, I looked at Thomann and a few other music websites as well. And I just couldn't find any that had the block inlays. They had the dot inlays, which I have on my Eastman 335 style guitar. Let me get that for comparison. Oh god. So the dot inlays are like this, which looks really nice, but I wanted something a little bit different since I already have a 335 style guitar. I don't know where to put this now. And what I ended up finding out is that the block inlays aren't really available on any kind of standard out of the factory models that they're doing at the moment. So then I jumped onto Reverb and I was looking around to see if I could find any that were second hand, that were for a reasonable price that I could pick up. And again, nothing really jumped out to me that I was particularly sold on. And then through my browsing history, it started to suggest other guitars to me, and one of those, or actually two, were these 1964 reissues. From what I could tell, there were only two of them available online at the time in the whole of Europe. There was one that was about £200 more. Neither of them were in the UK, so I had to get them shipped in from, this one came from the Netherlands, I believe. It's very nerve-wracking buying a guitar for this much money that you've never actually put your hands on and played before, and some people might even say that's a pretty foolish thing to do. But I figured because it's a custom shop, and obviously it being pretty expensive, it has to be a pretty good guitar. There's probably cases where that's not even true, but luckily it turned up, and I really did fall in love with it very quickly. I've modified a couple of things about it already. If you've watched many of my videos, you'll probably know that I like to tinker with all of my guitars. So I took the thumb bleeders off of the knobs just because I find that they get in the way. I don't really like the way they look, so they went pretty quickly. And then a couple of days ago, I also aged the pickups. Don't know if you can see that in the light very well, but they're kind of a bit of a sort of rusty matte finish now. I just did that by sanding them with some 800 grit sandpaper and then putting some ferric chloride on them, which oxidizes them slightly as well. I've done that to this guitar as well. I don't know how visible that actually is, but it looks pretty good when you look at it close up. I would never want to go to town relicking this properly, but I really don't like the look of clean humbuckers when they're shiny and you can see your own reflection in them. So I like to dull them up a little bit, especially because this is a 64 reissue. It's emulating a guitar that's 70 years old. So I think it kind of makes sense if all the parts aren't perfectly chrome. So anyway, that's enough of me talking. Let's hear what it sounds like. This is the neck pickup. The neck pickup especially really has quite a blooming sound. It's very rich, there's a lot of depth to it, but it's not muddy, it really cuts through. I put some new strings on it yesterday so it's sounding nice and bright. This is the middle position. And this is the bridge. If you're a subscriber, you might have already seen the cover of Supersonic that I did a couple of days ago by Alesis. If you haven't, go and check it out. It's probably the best cover that I've done so far. I'm feeling supersonic, give me gin and tonic. You can have it all, but how much do you want it? I played the main riff from the intro and all of the rhythm guitar on this 335, and it sounds amazing. And I did the cool trick where I double tracked the rhythm guitar, so I played one section on the 335 and one on my Les Paul, and then panned one to the left and one to the right. It gives the recording a very wide stereo sound, because each side is a bit different, so it sounds really cool. So anyway, back to the tones. That's with the volume on 10, and then obviously if you roll it back quite a lot, it cleans up really nicely. Like I said, it does the Alesis thing really, really well. So there we go, that's what it sounds like. I don't think I'm going to do too much playing because you're going to see it in lots of videos coming up soon anyway. Needless to say, it's a very, very nice guitar. I'm very privileged to own it, and it's going to get a lot of use. If you're interested, I might do a shootout with my other 335 guitar. This was about £1,000, so obviously it's literally a fifth of the price of this custom shop. And I think it would be interesting to see how close they can get, especially because this is finished in nitro. It's actually quite similar specs to this. When you actually look at them, the tuners are the same. The neck profile is very similar. It's got very similar sounding pickups, obviously, both humbuckers, but they also sound quite similar. All the electronics are pretty much the same, so it'd be interesting to see if they actually sound that similar. I don't know what I'm doing there. Some sort of thumbnail combination. So yeah, there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. A little sneak preview for the next video. I'm still waiting for some parts to arrive for it, but I have refinished my PRS Silver Sky SE in Daphne Blue, in Nitro. Done a little bit of relicking to it as well. Obviously there'll be a full video coming on this, so you'll see it a bit more soon, but it's looking really cool. I'm just waiting for the pickguard to arrive so I can put it all back together. But I've done a few mods to it that I think are going to be really exciting, and it's going to make it one of a kind. So stay tuned for that. Thanks very much for watching. See you soon.